We are this morning dealing again with submission out of 1 Peter in the 3rd chapter. And I was thinking this morning, as I was getting ready to come to church, that that's odd, isn't it, that Peter, of all people, dealt with submission. I mean, that just don't seem right. That's because, you know, he's kind of an outspoken, boisterous kind of fella. You would expect him not to be so interested in submission. But he talks a lot about it in this book here, 1 Peter. And today we're going to look at it again, and in this area of submission. Do you know the song "I Did It My Way"? Have you heard that song? That's the national anthem of hell. Did you know that? Yeah, that is. That's what they sing in hell. Oh, I did it my way. Yeah. If you'll think about it, you'll figure that out, because to get to heaven, you got to do it God's way, right? So that's what it is. I read a thing this week about a couple that were in marriage counseling, and marriage counseling is nothing wrong with that at all. It's good. In fact, everybody ought to do that once in a while. And the man and the wife were there talking, and the counselor said, "You know, sir, you need to pay more attention to your wife's needs, and can you describe your wife's goals? Well, or how about her dreams? How about her favorite song? You know, her favorite flower?" And he looked at his wife. He said, "Pillsbury Doughboy, isn't it? Our Pillsbury all-purpose flour. That's your favorite." This old boy's in trouble, wasn't he? He didn't get it. So it's okay to have marriage counseling. As I said, it's important that you do that. Now, submission. Let's talk about that for just a moment. Because generally submission means that we're giving authority over our lives to the Lord. We are submitting to Him. Now, we actually just have two different things we can submit to. We can submit to our own will, our own way, or we can submit to the Lord. Well, they're just the two. There aren't any others. I mean, even you can think of some that might fit in there, like your wife or whatever, but basically we just have two in the area of the Spirit. So Peter says that when we submit to the Lord, we are giving Him control over our life, we're trusting Him, and it's very important for a person's spiritual growth and happiness that we be submitted to the Lord. And as I said, it seems odd that old Peter would be the one promoting so much submission, but that's what he's saying. He's figured that out after a life of failure and ups and downs. Whenever a person has given their life to the Lord and they're following Him, that every part of your life takes on a different level, a different glow, a beauty that wasn't there, an energy that wasn't before. Because when you are boss of your own life and you're making all your own decisions and calling all your own shots, you have to you get what you sow sometimes. You get what you put in motion. And often we are reaping our own failures, our own struggles and disappointments because of the things we set in motion. But if a person would trust the Lord and submit to His leadership, we get a lot better deal here on this earth when we follow Him. So today, as we're running down to the end of 1 Peter today, we're going to look today at what happens when a person truly submits to the Lord. Why is that better? What are some of the things that we can expect to make our lives better when we submit to the Lord? And today we're going to start with the women. Or let's be more specific. We'll start with wives, as Peter starts out today. So men, if you're sitting by your wife and she's nodded off, this would be a good time to wake her up, because you want her to hear this real well. So let's read 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. Wives, in the same way, wait a minute, in the same way as what? Well, in the same way, Peter just got through talking about submitting to the governor and to the Caesars and to the emperors and authorities. And now in the same way, he says, and in the same way, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Now what Peter is saying here is very important for happiness of wives, and that is that a wife be in submission to her husband. Now, I want to tell you what that doesn't mean, first of all. That doesn't mean that the husband is a caveman that drags his wife in by the hair and just tells her everything to do, and she's not a doormat. In other words, as you look at this very carefully, you'll realize that this submission thing he's talking about here goes both ways. Wives are supposed to submit to their husband, but husbands are also submissive to their wife. It's not that one is going to be the boss over the other. It's like this. He's not one that's better than the other. God's not saying that. He's just saying you can't have a two-headed animal. Anything with two heads is a monster and it needs to be killed. You know what I'm saying? It can't make good decisions. Two heads. So God has put in the marriage relationship, He's put one to make decisions and one to follow that. And now that doesn't mean that the wives don't have input into decisions in the family. That doesn't mean that a wife is, as I said, just a doormat. You know, it means that there is co-submission that needs to go on here. And so if you want to be happy in your marriage relationship, then I suggest that you figure out God's plan. Now we can use our own plan. Now the women's liberals of our day, they would have a real trouble with this because they say, I'm not going to submit to any man. I get tickled whenever I'm going to do a wedding once in a while. I'll have a couple come in, the bride especially, and she'll say, you're not going to put that submit part in there, are you? And I say, no, I'm not going to put that in there, but I do. Because they can't, what are they going to do when we're at the ceremony, right? I'm just teasing, I don't know. Now, Peter here is telling us, he takes it to a different direction than I expected him to do. Because I figured he would say, submit yourselves to your own husbands, because that's the way God set it up in the Garden of Eden or whatever like that. But he goes at it in a totally different tact that I didn't see coming, except, when I read this. He says, because what it does is, it will win them over to the Lord. He says that's why women submit to the Lord. Now, in the ancient day, when this book was written, a lot of people were coming to faith in the Lord, and some women were coming, and their husbands had dragged behind. They hadn't come on in to the faith. And so Peter says, if you want to win your husband to the faith, then there's some things you need to do. And one is just to live like Christ. Live like Him. Submit to Him. Now, before we go much further, I want to clarify here that whenever we are in submission into authority, or when a wife is in submission to her husband, we don't bow down to them, but we bow down to God who put this plan in motion. So when women are in submission to their husbands, as the Bible talks about here, as Peter talks about here, we know that God is in control. They're bowing to Him, not unto a husband. Even though that's how this works out. But because witnessing to a family member is very difficult. You know that. It's hard to share your faith with a family member. They know too much about you. They see you in the good times and the bad times. And so it's hard to witness to a family member. So if you're going to do that, the best thing to do, wives especially, now since we're talking about you, for a wife to win her husband to the Lord, is you're not going to win him to the Lord by nagging him, by dragging him to church if he don't want to go, and just saying, well, you old fool, you need to get in church, that's never going to win somebody to the Lord. Peter says if you want to bring somebody to the Lord, you live like Christ in your home, and by your behavior, you'll win over your husband. Now, it can be done and done well, but it must be done mostly by action and not by deeds, instead of just so much language and so much talking. I don't think it's ever going to work that way. So never nag or punish, but always be Christ-like in your attitude. Because living under submission to the Lord is attractive. Now let me say it like this. It is attractive whenever we live in submission to the Lord. There's something that's just beautiful that happens in your life when God is in control. If you're the boss and you are standing up and barking orders and domineering and demanding, there's something that's not very attractive about that. But when a wife is in love with the Lord and in love with her husband and doing what God has called her to do, and living under that way, listen, it's beautiful. Now let's talk about women's beauty while we're here, because Peter's going to talk about women's beauty in the next verse here. And because women radiate an inner beauty when they're in submission to the Lord and in submission to their husbands. It radiates a beauty that's not outward. And just could I be honest with you, it's so much better to be around a beautiful woman on the inside than one that might be mean and ornery and negative and all on the outside. I mean, that's not good to be around that kind of a person. Let's read what he says here in verse 3. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. I don't know what else to say about this. I mean, Peter nails it. It's so important. Ladies, in our culture today, when everything is all about the outside, how it looks, how you look. And we're so rough on our children, and we've set this standard that if you're not beautiful, if you're not just perfect, then you're not going to fit into our world. But that's simply not true. We need to tell our young people they can relax. You are who you are on the outside. You can't help that. But it's God that's inside you that makes you truly beautiful. That's where beauty can come from. And if we could get that turned around, we'd take so much pressure off of people today. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to stay as beautiful as I am. It's tough to maintain that. But when we realize that true beauty is not outside, but it's inside. And we all have been around those people who weren't blessed so much with the outward expressions of beauty. We've all known them. But down inside, they have this Christ-like spirit that's joyful and radiant and serving and loving. And it's just so much better to do that. So ladies, if you want to be beautiful and you want to attract a very handsome husband and a good husband, actually I should say, you be beautiful on the inside, because that's what men are really looking for. Now, we are, we're kind of shallow bunch of guys. But the truth is we may say we want the good looks, but the truth is we want that person who's beautiful on the inside. Now Peter keeps talking here, and he goes on in verse 5, and he says, "For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves." And what he's saying is that the ladies in the Old Testament, they weren't so much into beauty, but they were adorned with holiness and with beauty on the inside. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, and like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord, you are her daughters, and if you do what is right, and do not give way to fear. I've tried to encourage my wife not to call me Lord in public, because it's so embarrassing. And when she's at home, she can do that. But when I'm in public, I'd rather she not. You know how much trouble I'm in now, don't you? Yeah. Somebody said one time, by the time we're 40, we get the face we deserve. You ever thought about that? By the time we're 40, we get the face we deserve. I don't know about that. There's some newlyweds that were on their honeymoon, and they were just enjoying each other's company and looking forward to their life together. And the groom took his bride by the hand and he said, "Honey, now that we're married, I hope you won't mind if I mention just a few little defects that I've noticed about you.
Whoa.
Surely you won't mind." And she said, "Oh, no, not at all." She said, "No. In fact, those little defects are what kept me from getting a better husband." So. So you just go right ahead. Ain't it the truth, huh? So if you want to be beautiful at any age, seriously, this is so much truth. If you want to be beautiful, you be a person that has Jesus on the inside. You bring Christ in. Let all the glory and the beauty of that inner radiance of Christ, let that be inside you. And that will change even your outward appearance. Now, men, let me talk to you just a minute here. Peter's going to talk to us men. So, ladies, if your husband has gone to sleep, this would be a good time to elbow him. Get him away. Verse 7. Husbands, in the same way. Oh, wait a minute. Husbands, in the same way. In what way? The same way. What's same? Submission. Husbands, in the same way. We're to be submissive to our wives. You don't hear that very much anymore, but it needs to go both ways. And so, as I said earlier, if you're a man and you think the way to be a man is to just domineer and be the boss and the head of your home and just make all the decisions and just, just force it on everybody, you're wrong as you can be. The Bible doesn't talk about that, the caveman attitude. It talks about a submissive man that loves his wife, and let's keep reading what he says here. So husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner. Well, there's not a woman on planet Earth that wouldn't want to submit to a man that loved her sacrificially. There's not a woman anywhere that would have a problem submitting to a man who'd laid his life down for his wife. Man, when that man does, and that woman realizes that he has committed his life to loving her and serving her. Listen, I want to tell you something. No woman's going to rebel about submitting to that. That's just not the way that works. It says, because we treat them with respect as the weaker partner. I want to say to you that I know the Bible puts men in authority of leadership, but to say that women are weaker, I don't know if I believe that or not. I think women are tougher than men. Somebody told me one time, said having a baby, said it's just like taking your bottom lip and pulling it up over your head. That'd be kind of painful, wouldn't it? Do that. I don't believe women are weak at all. Do you, David? No, they're tough. I mean, women, how you do what you do, I just am amazed at you. And I want you to know that real men don't see women as just something to drag around by the hair, or something to boss around. Real men love their wives and respect them. I've noticed through many years of being married and being a pastor that often men, we reap what we sow in relationships. If we come in and we're negative and bitter and domineering and it comes back to us, it's because we've sowed that seed in our home. But when we love our wife, we're considerate of her and we respect her, man, that marriage can flow, that goodness can flow in both directions. So you be careful, because if you think, and you've been raised with this caveman attitude, that unless you're not a real man, unless you domineer your wife, let me tell you something, you've just not read the Bible. The Bible talks about co-submission. That's just not the way we did it. And if you're going to demand respect, or if you have to demand that your wife submits to you, you're never going to get it. It's never going to come by demanding and standing up and being, some kind of caveman. You're going to get it by loving and caring and loving. A guy was being reproached by his wife for forgetting her birthday. And men, you've never done that, I'm sure. But this husband, he said something that we all need to learn. And I'm going to use this the next time that I forget something like that, especially. I'm going to say, he says, how do you expect me to remember your birthday when you never look any older? I'm going to remember that. Clarence, let's write that down. You don't want to forget that. Dr. Willard Harley, a psychologist, and went to working with some people, and he did some doctoral studies on this and wrote some papers and some books on it. And he said these things. And I'm going to give you a list of 5 things that a man desires in a marriage relationship. These are the 5 things that this psychologist, this doctor, has discovered, and I think he's right on. And I want you to, ladies, I want you to listen and make a note mentally, if not, whatever, but listen carefully, because he's right on. He's got this right. Number 1, sexual fulfillment. Number 2, recreational companionship. You understand? Men want a woman that is a companion and recreates with them and, goes fishing with them. Or I used to take my wife fishing until she started beating me at catching more fish, and I don't take her anymore. But recreational companionship, and then an attractive spouse. It's important that we be attractive. Again, it's not so much outwardly, but inwardly. And number 4, domestic support, taking care of things that around the house, and then admiration of his wife. Men need a wife to admire them. I told you before, we men are just a bunch of little bitty boys, little babies. We really are. We're just little babies. We've grown up, and some of us got a hair on our face and stuff, but we're still just a little bitty boy inside. Come on, you know it, ladies, don't you? You girls know it. We need that. And when a wife admires her husband and supports him and blesses him in those ways, and then especially if we've got the admiration of our wife, we'll do anything. So ladies, take a clue here. The clue phone is ringing. If you want your husband to be a happier man, once in a while just kind of brag on him a little bit and admire him, because we need that so bad. Now, men, wake up now. I'm going to tell you what the women need from a relationship. Women need, number one, is affection. They need to be caressed and loved and some affection. That's what women need, number one. Number two, conversation. They need for you to not just sit there and say, mm-hmm. They need for you to share with them and communicate with them. Well, honey, I told you when I married you I loved you. If I change my mind, I'll tell you. That's the way a lot of men communicate. We need to have conversation with our wife, and to share with them, and to intimately discuss life, and number three, honesty and openness. Are you ready, men? Affection, conversation, honesty and openness. Our women need us to listen, to be open to them, to be honest with them. Number four, and this is extremely important, and I've seen this fourth one break up a lot of marriages later on, and that's financial support. Women need and desire to be financially supported, and it's very important that we do that. And then family, and then the last one is contentment. Let me read it again. Affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial support, family, and commitment. And we need those. That's what they need from us in our lives. A bunch of German psychologists did some studies on married couples, but not all of the married couples that they studied were producing successful husbands. The husbands weren't always successful, but of those who were, they tried to figure out why are husbands more successful, some than others, even in business or in their careers. Why are some husbands more than the others? And they did a great long study on it, and one of the things that came out of it is extremely shocked me when I read about it, is that and you're not going to believe this, but a good morning kiss makes a husband, he earns 20 to 30% more money than non-kissers. I didn't see that coming, did you? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, men, you want to do better at your job? Kiss your wife once in a while. It won't hurt her. When I'm marrying young couples on the night of the rehearsal, I always say, when we get to that kissing part, they're always kind of, what are we going to do? I say, well, you need to go home and practice that tonight at Lodge. They always are so relieved when I tell them to go home and practice that kissing. Well, what I'm saying here, that is a little bit funny kind of sounding, but it's very important for us men that we are more affectionate with our wives. Men, we've been blessed. Oh my, I know almost all of you, and you married way above your category. You really did. And so men, we need to be more thankful and appreciative. Have you ever wondered, men, while I'm talking to you, have you ever wondered why that sometimes your spiritual life struggles? You men ever have trouble in your spirit life and your prayer life? It's kind of, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's so hard. Because listen to what it says here, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. That's how he ends that verse. So that nothing will hinder your prayers. I'm going to tell you today that many men are experiencing spiritual drought because they are not in good standing with their spouse, with their wife. They're at odds with her, or they're angry and they're fighting or whatever. And whenever you have something against a brother or a wife or a sister, whatever, when you have something against somebody, and the Bible tells us in Matthew 5:24, leave your gift here in front of the altar and go and be reconciled to your brother, then come back and offer your gift. Our lives can get so much better spiritually if we're in right standing with our brother. John tells us that we should never say that we love God if we hate our brother or hate somebody, or if we're crossways with our wife and we're fighting. It hurts our spiritual lives. We are not subdivided spirits. We're not just part here in body and soul. We're all unified. We can't love God and hate a brother at the same time. And you can't be in love with the Lord and not be in love with your spouse. So, men, go humbly to your wife. Go humbly to her and seek her forgiveness. If you're crossways with her, and things aren't working good, go to her and ask her to forgive you. I'm going to give you the simplest way to end most marital arguments or disagreements. And that's with these words. Simply say these words. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Just think of what that do. Just go to your wife, then, and say, look, honey, I'm sorry. I blew it. Would you forgive me? And that'll end most of the problems. We need to do that more and more. Ask to be forgiven. Now, when we get right with the Lord, men and women, when we're submissive to Him, we paint a better picture for the world. Let's read verse 18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the Spirit. Jesus died for your sins. Submit your life to Him, and He will give you the desires of your heart. He will bring you back to spiritual life. Submission reveals the real Jesus in our lives. And Peter tells us again, we need to be in submission. Now, he's going to go ahead in the rest of the chapter. We're not going to preach through it today, but he talks about in the rest of the chapter about salvation and about baptism. And let me simply tell you that this fall, the Sunday after Labor Day, we're going to be going back to Sauk River for another baptismal service, if there's any water in it. But we're going to go down to the Sauk River and have a baptismal service. And if you've given Jesus your life, if you've expressed your faith in Him and you trusted Him, come and join us down there and show the world what's happened in your heart and be baptized. I'm going to just encourage you to do that, because you need to follow Him and be public about your faith. And that's what Peter says to us today about the water baptism, and that he talks about it in the rest of the chapter. So today, here I'll wind it up. I'm done. I'm about finished. But let me remind you again that we are to be in submission to the Lord, number one to Him. Because when we're in submission to Him, then we understand how He authorizes the submission of our life. To governments, to authorities, to spouses, to each other, we are in submission. And we're not bowing down to someone, but we're bowing down to the Lord when we submit to His order. So let's pray together. And as we pray, look inside your heart today. Ask yourself, am I in authority to the Lord? Am I submitting to Him? And how about my relationships with my family? Is that doing? How's that doing? Let's pray together.